When Shaq stopped by Shelby County General, a county hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, he only wanted 15 minutes. He was there to visit Caleb Tillman, son of an old friend, being treated inside. What he didn't expect was running into Dorothy Reeves, the nurse, who had sat down beside him at 2 in the morning back in 2003 and helped him through a rough night in the ER. That discovery stopped him cold in the middle of the pediatric hallway. Shaq saw Dorothy still pushing a medicine cart more than 20 years later. Something in her face told him she was hiding something, and his reaction to that set off a chain of events nobody in that hospital could have seen coming. What started as a simple visit changed Dorothy's life. It changed hundreds of people in the Tennessee nursing community, and it changed Shaq too. Shaq walked into Shelby County General at 10:17 Tuesday morning. He ducked his head going through the front door. Not to be polite. If he didn't duck, his forehead would hit the frame. He had been doing that his whole life. Every door in America. 30 years of ducking. Inside, the air was cold, sharp. The smell hit him fast, antiseptic and stale coffee from the vending machine by the wall. Fluorescent lights buzzed above. The floor was gray and worn smooth from years of foot traffic. This was not the kind of hospital with carpet or art on the walls. This was the kind people came to when they had no other choice. He stood in the lobby. Nobody looked up. That was the thing about places like this. On a Tuesday morning, people were too tired to be curious. A man in the corner stared at an insurance form. His pen tapped his knee over and over. A woman at the front desk spoke Spanish, louder with each sentence. 3 kids sat in plastic chairs nearby. The oldest one patted her little sister's back. Slow, steady, like a clock. Shaq looked around once. Then he walked straight to the elevator. 3rd floor. Pediatrics. Devin had called him the night before. Devin's voice was short and tight. The voice of a father trying not to sound scared. Caleb's got bad pneumonia. He's asking if you're coming. Shaq booked the first flight out of Orlando. No assistant. No security. Just him. He carried a small stuffed bear he grabbed at the convenience store near the parking lot. Nothing fancy. Nothing better within 3 blocks. The elevator opened. He stepped in and filled most of it. A young nurse inside looked up fast and stepped back. Shaq shifted right and looked up at the floor numbers. His shoulders were so wide that even after moving over, there was barely room for one more person. Sorry, he said. She shook her head. No, you didn't do anything. The doors closed. She stared at the doors. He stared at the numbers. 3rd floor. Doors open. The hallway was narrow. Lights more yellow up here. The antiseptic smell stronger. Somewhere near the end of the hall, a child was crying. Slow and even. The kind of crying that comes after a very long time. No energy left in it. That sound landed somewhere in his chest. He had heard it before. In other hospital hallways. Other cities. When he was a boy, and there was no money for medicine. He checked the room number. Room 314. Turn right. He walked 10 steps. Then he stopped. At the far end of the hall, a woman pushed a medicine cart toward him. Her pace was slow, not lazy, drained. Like every step cost more than she had. Shoulders curved forward. Left hand gripping the cart rail. Head down. Eyes on the clipboard. He looked once. He looked again. That face. The angle of her jaw. The way she tilted her head while reading and still kept walking. He knew her, even after more than 20 years. Memory is strange like that. It forgets the names of people who mattered. But it holds on forever to the face of someone who sat beside you at 2 in the morning when you had nothing left. Dorothy Reeves. 2003, the Memphis ER. Summer. He hurt his hand in a small accident after a game. Nothing serious. But it hurt. He walked into the emergency room at 1:47 in the morning. The waiting area was packed. He found a corner chair. He pulled his hoodie low. His right arm wrapped around his left hand. His eyes were red, not from pain. He was exhausted, and he did not want anyone to look at him the way people looked when they figured out who he was. A nurse came over. She placed a form on his leg with a pen. You need to fill this out. He looked at the form. He looked at the pen. He looked at the form again. His hand shook a little. Not from pain. There are nights, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, when you are just a person sitting alone in a hospital waiting room at 2 in the morning. And you don't want to fill out anything. He didn't fill it out. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Then a woman pulled a chair over and sat beside him. No questions. No explanation. She just picked up the form and looked at him once. Can I help you fill this out? Then she started writing, line by line, as he gave her the answers. She never looked up at the TV showing NBA highlights. She never said his name, with the voice of someone who just realized who she was sitting next to. She just filled out the form. Every line. Her pen clicked softly after each one. When she finished, she stood up. She placed the form back on his leg. She gave one small nod. Press the call button if you need anything. Then she walked back to the nurse's station. He watched her go. He never said a word. That was Dorothy Reeves. And now she was pushing a medicine cart down the third-floor hallway of the same hospital. And something in her face said she was carrying something she hadn't told anyone about. Shaq stood still in the middle of the hall. The stuffed bear still in his left hand. Room 314 still at the end of the hall on the right. He didn't move yet. Dorothy pushed the cart closer. She still hadn't looked up. Shaq stepped aside to let her pass. The cart rolled by. Then she looked up to check the room number. She saw him. 1 second. She went still. Not the second of someone who just spotted a famous person. The second of someone whose memory just pulled up a face it had stored away a long time ago and wasn't sure it was right. "Excuse me," she said, stepping to the side. "I wasn't paying attention." "It's fine," Shaq said. Then he paused. "Are you Dorothy Reeves?" She looked up again, straight at him. 2 more seconds. "Yes," she said slowly. "I'm Dorothy." "I don't know if you remember me," he said. 2003, the ER. Around 2 in the morning. Dorothy looked at him. Something shifted in her eyes. Not the look of someone recognizing a star. The look of someone placing one specific night out of thousands of nights on the job. "The man who wouldn't fill out his paperwork," she said quietly. "That's right," he said. She nodded once. No excitement. No big reaction. Just the nod of someone who found a small piece of memory they had set aside long ago. "Did your hand heal okay?" she asked. He wasn't expecting that. "Yes, it did. Thank you." She smiled. Quick and clean. The smile of someone who had smiled at hundreds of patients every week for over 20 years and learned how to do it without spending much. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said. "Thank you for asking." 2 words. Too fast. Too clean. Like a door closing before anyone could get a foot in. He looked at her for 1 more second. Under the yellow lights, her skin looked a little gray. Her eyes were sunken, not from tiredness, but from something heavier. Her left hand gripped the cart rail. Not to push it, more like to hold herself up. He had seen that face before. On his mother, Lucille, back in Newark. The years she worked double shifts to pay rent. The nights she came home after midnight and sat at the kitchen table with the look of someone who had nothing left. She never complained. She just said, "I'm fine," and kept going. "Good," he said. "I'm glad you're okay." She gave 1 more nod. Then she pushed the cart forward. He watched her until she turned into the side hallway. Then he turned and walked toward room 314. Caleb Tillman sat propped up in bed with an iPad on his lap and 1 earbud half in. 9 years old. Thinner from almost 2 weeks in the hospital. Still some color in his cheeks. His eyes were sharper than Devin had made them sound. When he saw Shaq duck through the doorway, Caleb pulled out his earbud and sat straight up. Fast. "Uncle Shaq." "Hey, kid." Shaq set the stuffed bear on the bed beside him. "You look like you haven't slept in 3 days." "I sleep all the time here," Caleb said, already picking up the bear. "It's so boring." "I know." Shaq pulled the chair over and sat. The plastic chair made a loud sound under his weight. He sat carefully. "Where's your dad?" "He went to work. He came this morning and then left. He said he can't ask for more time off." Shaq didn't say anything about that. Devin did electrical work on his own. Every day away from a job was a day without pay. Caleb said it the way you state the weather. No complaint. No sadness. Just facts. At 9 years old, he already knew. They talked for 20 minutes. Caleb told him about a game on the iPad. Shaq told him about a time he got sick during a season and had to stay in a hospital room. Caleb listened the way kids listen when they are lonely and just need someone there. The story doesn't have to be great. Someone just has to show up. When Shaq stood up to leave, Caleb said, "Uncle Shaq, what's the bear's name?" You pick. Caleb studied it. Bobby. Bobby it is. Shaq ducked back through the doorway. The hallway was the same. Yellow lights. Antiseptic smell. A cart rolling somewhere far away. He stood outside room 314. Normally, he would have gone straight to the elevator. He didn't go. He turned back toward the side hallway, where Dorothy had gone. He found her in the nurse's room at the end of the corridor. She sat at a small desk writing in a patient file. Her back curved forward slightly. Her reading glasses sat low on her nose. The door was open. Shaq stood at the threshold. Dorothy. She looked up. I don't want to bother you, he said. I just want to ask, are you really okay? She looked at him for a moment. Then she set her pen down. Are you asking for real? Or just being polite? For real. She was quiet. She looked down at the file. Then back up. I'm fine, she said. But this time the words came out slower, like she had to reach a little deeper to find them. Shaq nodded. Okay. He turned to go. 3 steps down the hall, a voice came low from behind him. Hey. He turned around. It wasn't Dorothy. A young nurse stood in the doorway of the next room. Maybe 28. Small, dark blue scrubs, hair in a neat braid. She glanced quickly toward Dorothy's room. Then she tilted her head toward the corner. Can you come here for a second? He followed her to the far end of the side hallway, about 15 steps from the nurse's room. She looked up at him. She barely reached his chest, but her eyes were steady. My name is Keisha Burrell. I've worked the same shift as Dorothy for 4 years. I'm listening, Shaq said. You asked her if she was okay. Keisha kept her voice low. She's not. 8 months ago, she had a heart attack. Emergency surgery. The total bill was $51,000. Insurance paid $9,800. The rest, $41,200, she still owes. Shaq stood still. She hasn't told anyone here, Keisha said. I only found out because she left some mail on the break room table. I saw a debt collection envelope on top. She paused. This Friday, she is signing papers to sell her house. Where does she live? Midtown. She bought the place in 2002. 22 years. Keisha looked straight at him. She doesn't complain. She doesn't ask for anything. She just shows up. 6 days a week. 12-hour shifts. 8 months after open-heart surgery. Shaq looked toward the nurse's room. Through the small window in the door, he could still see Dorothy. She had picked up her pen again. Still writing. Back still curved forward. Does she know who I am? He asked. No, Keisha said. And I didn't tell her. He nodded slowly. 3 seconds of silence. Then he pulled out his phone. He didn't make the calls inside. He went down to the first floor, walked out, and stood in the parking lot. October wind moved through Memphis. It smelled like dry leaves and exhaust. He leaned against the rental car. First call, Nathan Brook, a lawyer in Nashville who handled insurance disputes. Shaq had worked with him before. He laid out the situation, no name yet, just the facts. Nathan listened. Let me see the file. If the denial was procedural, we have a case. Give me the patient's name and the insurance company. Second call, Keisha Burrell. She had pressed her number into his hand before he got on the elevator. I need Dorothy's full name, her insurance contract number, and the name of her carrier. Can you get that? 2 seconds of quiet. I can get it. I'll text you tonight. Third call, Raymond Okafor, president of the Tennessee Nurses Association. Shaq had met him once at a healthcare event in Nashville the year before. He called the personal number. Mr. Okafor, I want to talk about starting an emergency fund for healthcare workers in Tennessee. I have an anonymous donor ready to put in the seed money. Can we meet this week? Okafor didn't ask who the donor was. He just said, Wednesday work. Wednesday works, Shaq said. He hung up. He looked back at the hospital building. 3rd floor, East Wing. Somewhere behind those windows, Dorothy Reeves was pushing her cart and writing in files and telling everyone she was fine. He got in the car, but he didn't drive yet. He sat there for 3 minutes, both hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead. He was thinking about a night in Newark. He was 12 years old. His mother, Lucille, came home just before midnight after a second shift at the hospital, where she worked as a nursing aide. He was still awake. He lay on the living room floor. He heard the key turn in the door, then her steps going into the kitchen. He didn't get up. He just lay there. He heard the chair scrape the floor. He heard her sit down. Then silence. No refrigerator opening. No stove clicking on. Just silence. The silence of someone who had nothing left. Not even enough to boil water for tea. He counted to 45. Then he got up and walked to the kitchen. Lucille sat at the table, with both hands flat on the surface. She hadn't taken off her shoes. She looked up when she heard him. She smiled. "Why aren't you in bed?" "I'm not tired," he said. "I'll make you some tea." She didn't argue. He boiled the water, set the cup in front of her. Then he sat across from her and said nothing else. They stayed together in that kitchen for about 20 minutes. She drank her tea. He looked out the window at the Newark night. Nobody said, "I'm fine." Nobody needed to. He understood later what that was. Sometimes people don't need money or words. They just need someone to know they are carrying something heavy and not pretend it isn't there. Dorothy Reeves was not his mother, but she wore the same face. The face of people who spent their whole lives caring for others and never learned how to let anyone care for them. He started the car. Wednesday morning, he flew to Nashville. He met Raymond Okafor at the Tennessee Nurses Association office on the 7th floor of a building on Church Street. Okafor was 58. Tall, deep voice, the kind of man who looked straight at you when he talked. They sat across from each other. Shaq wore a dark blue button-down shirt. Nothing gave away who he was, except the part that couldn't be hidden. He didn't give his full name. He said he was someone who wanted to invest in Tennessee healthcare workers. "The idea is an emergency fund," Shaq said, "for healthcare workers whose medical bills get denied by insurance. People who care for others every day, but have no one to turn to when they get sick." Okafor studied him. "Have you thought about how it would work?" "Not completely. I need the association to manage the applications. I don't want my name in any public documents." "Why not?" "Because if the person getting help knows who sent it, they'll feel like it's charity." "I don't want that." Okafor nodded slowly. "Do you have a first case in mind?" "Yes. A nurse in Memphis. Dorothy Reeves. She owes $41,200 after emergency heart surgery. The insurance denial was procedural. She's signing papers to sell her house this Friday. She's lived there 22 years. Okafor looked at him for a long moment. He didn't ask how Shaq knew her. "I need to see the insurance file. I'll send it today." They shook hands. Shaq flew back to Memphis by 4 in the afternoon. That same Wednesday, Nathan Brooke called back. "I reviewed the file. The denial is based on a missing procedure code, 33521. The surgeon didn't include it in the paperwork. That's an admin error, not a valid reason to deny the claim. We can fight this, but we need the surgeon's signature to add the code." "Who's the surgeon?" "Leonard Voss. He moved to Piedmont Atlanta Hospital 6 months ago. We've emailed 3 times. No answer." Shaq sat still in the car. "Give me his number." Nathan paused. "You sure?" "Give me the number." Nathan read it out. Shaq dialed right away. The phone rang. 3 times. 4. 5. Someone picked up. "Voss. Dr. Voss," Shaq said, voice level. "I'm calling about a former patient of yours in Memphis. Dorothy Reeves. You performed emergency heart surgery on her 8 months ago." Silence. "Her insurance denied $41,200 of her bill," Shaq continued. "The denial was based on a missing code in your paperwork. She is about to sell her house this Friday to pay that debt. She bought that house 22 years ago. 3 seconds. Who is this?" "Someone asking you to do what you should have done the first time," Shaq said. Calm. No threat. No pleading. Just a clear statement between 2 men. More silence. "Have the patient's attorney send a formal request for a record fix, Dr. Voss said finally. "Send it today? I'll sign it before end of business." Shaq called Nathan II. He hung up. "Send the amendment request to Voss right now." "You talked to him?" "Just now." 2 seconds of quiet. "All right. Sending now." Dr. Leonard Voss's signature came through at 6:43 that evening. That same night, Shaq texted Keisha. "The insurance file is being handled. One more thing. Can you get Dorothy to say yes to a nursing conference in Nashville on Thursday and Friday? Travel and hotel are covered. Tell her the association is sponsoring it." Keisha wrote back. "She won't go. She can't miss her shifts." "Can her shifts be covered?" 3 minutes later. "I can make it work. But she still won't go." "You'll know what to say." Thursday morning, Keisha caught Dorothy in the locker room before the shift. "There's a conference in Nashville. 2 days, fully paid. The association wanted experienced nurses. You were nominated. Dorothy hung up her coat. I have shifts. I already got them covered. You haven't taken one day off in 8 months. I don't need a day off. Dorothy. Keisha stood straight. You had open-heart surgery 8 months ago. You work 6 days a week. And you just told me you don't need a break. She paused. Do you want to keep doing this job? Dorothy looked at her. That was the only way in with someone like Dorothy. Not through sympathy, through the work. 2 days, Dorothy said. Thursday and Friday. I already printed your boarding pass, Keisha said. While Dorothy was in Nashville, Nathan Brooke filed the updated insurance claim with the corrected code. The insurance company reviewed it Friday morning. They had to pay the full $41,200. The house sale paperwork was never signed. The title office got a cancellation notice. Raymond Okafor signed the official charter for the Tennessee Healthcare Workers Emergency Fund that Friday afternoon. Dorothy Reeves was named the first recipient. A formal letter went to her home address in Memphis. Shaq flew back to Orlando Thursday night. He was not in Memphis when any of it happened. Dorothy landed back in Memphis Sunday evening. 7:20 flight. Keisha picked her up at the airport. They drove mostly in silence back to Midtown. Keisha parked in front of the house. Go on in. I'll be right there. Dorothy got out, walked to the door, unlocked it, stepped inside. She turned on the hall light, set her bag on the couch, walked into the kitchen to put water on for tea. There was a white envelope on the kitchen table. Tennessee Nurses Association. Small blue logo in the top left corner. Dorothy looked at it, looked at her name on the front. Then she sat down. She opened it slowly. 2 pages inside. The first was a formal letter. Dorothy Reeves was selected as the first recipient of the Tennessee Healthcare Workers Emergency Fund. Her medical debt of $41,200 had been cleared through a successful insurance appeal and fund support. Remaining balance, 0. The pending property sale had been canceled. The second page was a short note from Raymond Okafor. Dorothy, nursing is not a job people choose to get rich. They choose it because they believe caring for others is worth doing. This fund exists to tell people like you that the Tennessee healthcare community does not let its own stand alone. Dorothy read it through, set it on the table, looked at the space in front of her. She didn't cry right away. She sat still for a minute, 2 minutes. In the quiet kitchen of the house, she thought she was going to lose last Friday. She looked around. The refrigerator she bought on a payment plan in 2009. The wall clock that had been ticking loudly since 2017 because she kept waiting for it to die before changing the battery. The oak kitchen table from the flea market in 2004. One corner still had an old coffee ring stain that never came out no matter what she tried. 22 years. Small things like that, piled up, become a home, become a life. She placed both hands flat on the table. The way Lucille O'Neill used to sit at her kitchen table in Newark. The way people sit when they have carried something for a long time and someone finally tells them they can put it down. Keisha came in a few minutes later. She saw Dorothy at the table. She didn't say a word. She just pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. Who did this? Dorothy asked after a moment. Her voice was steady, just quieter than usual. Keisha looked at her. Someone who cares about you, she said. Dorothy looked back at the letter. She gave one slow nod, not a nod of acceptance. The nod of someone trying to hold something larger than what they were used to holding. 2 weeks later. Nashville, the Hyatt Place on Korean Veterans Boulevard. Second-floor meeting room. 200 seats. This was the official launch of the Tennessee Healthcare Workers Emergency Fund, hosted by the Tennessee Nurses Association, with hospital reps, community health groups, and local press in the room. Dorothy was invited to speak as the fund's first recipient. She wore a white blouse and dark navy slacks, the outfit she saved for important occasions over 20 years. She was not used to standing on a stage. She stood in the wings, with her hands folded, looking out at the crowd. Keisha stood beside her. Just say what's true, she said quietly. You're better at that than anyone. Dorothy nodded. She walked to the podium. She had no prepared speech. She just stood at the microphone and talked. About 24 years of nursing. About waking up in the recovery room last October, and her first thought not being about her own health, but about who would cover her Monday shift. About opening an insurance denial letter and knowing she would have to sell the house she had paid for dollar by dollar over 22 years. About not telling anyone, because she was the one who helped people. She had never learned how to be on the other side of that. The room was very quiet. "I don't know who's behind this fund," she said. "I'm not sure I need to know. What I know is that someone saw me, not Nurse Dorothy Reeves, with 24 years of experience. Just a person who needed help and didn't know how to ask." She paused. "That's what we do in hospitals every day. We see what patients need before they can say it out loud. I never thought anyone would do that for us." She bowed her head. Then she stepped back from the podium. The room applauded. Dorothy walked down from the stage and looked out into the crowd. The way you scan a room when you are looking for one specific person. Her eyes moved across the front rows, the middle rows, the back rows, back row, right side, against the far pillar. A very large man was standing, not sitting. The conference chairs were not built for someone his size. He wore a dark blue flannel shirt with a plaid pattern. He stood just behind the pillar, out of the main line of sight. Nobody was looking at him, because everyone was looking at the stage. He was looking at her. Dorothy went still at the bottom of the aisle. He gave one nod. Slow. Once. She knew that nod right away. Not because of who he was. Because 21 years ago, at 2:14 in the morning in the Memphis ER, when she placed a completed registration form into the hands of a very large man sitting alone in a waiting room who did not want to be seen, he had looked up at her exactly like this. Dorothy nodded back. No words. No walking toward each other. No explanation needed. Keisha appeared at her side, from somewhere in the crowd. She looked in the same direction Dorothy was looking. She didn't ask anything. When Dorothy looked back at the far pillar a moment later, the man was gone. Just an empty chair. Just the pillar standing by itself. She walked over. She stood in front of that empty chair. Then she sat down in it. No particular reason. She just wanted to sit there for a minute. The room buzzed around her. Someone laughed loudly across the room. The smell of cold coffee and winter coats filled the air. Dorothy looked straight ahead at the small wooden podium still standing on the stage. And for the first time in 8 months, she wasn't calculating anything. Not the bank balance. Not how much was left this month. Not whether her brother in Chattanooga had a spare room if she lost the house. She just sat and breathed. 37 miles northwest of Shelby County General, on a flight from Nashville back to Orlando, Shaquille O'Neal sat in the back row, the only row where he could stretch his legs, and looked out the window. White clouds, clear blue sky, the kind of November sky you only get in the Mid-South, high and open with nothing in the way. He wasn't thinking much. He remembered something his mother told him when he was small. Lucille O'Neal, Newark, New Jersey. The person who gives what they have never really loses anything. He didn't understand it back then. He understood it a little better now. Not because he was smarter, but because he had met enough people like Dorothy Reeves. People who gave everything they had, every single day, without keeping score. What you give doesn't disappear. It just takes a long time to come back around. Sometimes 21 years. The plane began to descend. Memphis was already behind him. Below, the Mississippi River moved wide and brown and slow, going exactly where it needed to go. Whether anyone was watching or not. Shaq watched it until the clouds covered it. Then he closed his eyes. Back in room 314 at Shelby County General, the small stuffed bear, named Bobby, sat on Caleb Tillman's pillow. Devin was dozing in the plastic chair in the corner, the sleep of a man who had been holding himself together for 3 days. Caleb lay on his back staring at the ceiling, eyes open, breathing steadier than 2 days before. In Nashville, Dorothy Reeves sat in a plastic chair in the back row of an emptying conference room and thought about nothing in particular. On a plane back to Orlando, Shaquille O'Neal fell asleep before the aircraft crossed the Tennessee state line. Nobody outside of 3 people, Nathan Brooke in Nashville, Keisha Burrell in Memphis, and Raymond Okafor at the association, knew what had happened that week. All 3 had good reasons to stay quiet. The Tennessee Healthcare Workers Emergency Fund kept going. In its first year, 14 nurses and hospital workers received help. In the second year, 21. The name of the founding donor never appeared in any public document. Only one line in the association's internal records said who it was, anonymous, at donor's request. Dorothy Reeves kept working at Shelby County General. She still pushed the medicine cart down the third-floor hallway. She still helped patients fill out forms when they didn't have the strength. She still said, "I'm fine," when people asked. But one thing was different. The house in Midtown was still there. And she knew it would stay. Shaq never talked about what happened that week. No post. No interview. Nothing. People asked him sometimes, over the years, why he did things like that without letting anyone know. He usually didn't answer. Not because he had nothing to say, but because the real answer was long and old. It started with a boy in Newark. With the hallways of county hospitals, that boy sat in, with his mother. With the nights Lucille came home late, and sat at the kitchen table, with nothing left. He grew up watching people look at his mother, and see no one. Janitors, nurses, electricians, bus drivers, the people who kept everything running, never remembered until they were gone. He had money now. He had a name. He had everything. That boy in Newark never thought was possible. But the one thing he never wanted to lose was simple. The ability to walk into a hospital hallway, to see a woman pushing a medicine cart, to look at her face and know right away, without being told, without asking, that she was carrying something too heavy. Not to feel sorry for her, not to rescue her, just to see her, because sometimes that is where everything starts.